All right, I'm coming to you today. If you saw in my video title, you know what this video is about. But let me just acknowledge that I got COVID, the Omicron BA.5 variant. I haven't have contacted any COVID virus since its origination, and so I've been very lucky and fortunate, and skipped out on a lot of that. So this is the first time I've been sick, and it's pretty nasty. So I've got a lot of sore throat, and a lot of bad extra stuff that's come with this, and tiredness, and a little bit of temperature, and a lot of body soreness and aches. But I'm getting through it. I'm on the medication now, proper medication, instead of trying to home remedy, and so it's going to get better here soon. But I'm feeling a little bit good today, or better than the last couple of days. But here's Mac, and so today, I'm just going to go over the scenario that I guess helped to promote him to bite me on my arm. I'm going to show you this. And so he's about almost a 4-foot long Tegu. And sheesh. So he was in my cage, my pen in my room, in my house, in my 4x8, and I move them back and forth from the 4x8 cage, and I just want to be upfront with everyone. And the reason why I'm making this video is that Tegus are just not for everybody, and they're not an easy pet to care for when they get larger. When they're little babies, they're easy, and it's so much more fun. I mean, it's fun, and because there's less that's got to be done. But when they get big, it's a lot more of a handful. So I've got the cage in one room over here, and then I've got a big room over on this side of the house. And so when the two Tegus are not getting along, and Mac is being real dominant and sexual and trying to bite on her, I've got to be quick to be able to separate them and move him into the other room, or bring her in there too, because a much bigger space, they can deal with each other. And if the red female wants to get away, she has no problem getting away. And then that distance between them, then I guess Mac loses his urge to, even though I think he's still too young to be sexually more motivated and do this crazy little behavior that he does. And he's a little bit more wanting to do his will today. But so I went in there and I had him in the 4x8 cage, and Mac was sitting on top of Sassy and heavily breathing and wiggling his rear end, but his rear end wasn't lined up with her rear end, and I lifted his tail up, and his little hemipenis isn't out or anything. But she looks really beautiful right now, and her skin she's shed, and so I don't want her mouth on her, marring her up. So long story short, excuse me, I picked him up, and I usually don't have a care in the world, and I will usually just kind of carry him, in my arms when he's not acting really motivated to go somewhere. And so his mouth, he's acting up today. Something's got him acting up, because he's really not, doesn't do that. He's really calm. But so I had him, and I wasn't paying attention to his head. I was walking through the house, and had him on my arms. Well, he decided that, and I may have to go put him down, because I want to show you more a close-up of this. So bear with me real quick, because I would hate for him to get on the ground. He would be gone, and I don't really want to wrangle him around my neck. I'm back. So I had him kind of cuddled in my arms right here, and his head rests on my arm, and it's not a big deal. He flicks his tongue out. Obviously, he had tasted me. He knew with his tongue that I wasn't a prey or a rat or something like that. So, but he had his head resting right here on my arm, and I'm walking through. I just looked down. He had just turned his head like he does when he wants to scoop up food, and he grabbed me on my arm, and I put ice on it right away. So if I hadn't put ice on this like 3 minutes after, and then had ice on it for an hour, it would be much more black and blue and swollen, which and I'll go into this detail a bit more, because I would never want to be bit by, almost a 4-foot long tegu, and think that it would be more brutal than it was. But let me just share with you. So he had latched onto my arm. Make sure I'm in the video here. Let me lower he got me right here, and initially I just caught out of the corner of my eye him turn his head and reach and get my arm, and then I felt the pinch, and it wasn't in the start a bad pinch, but then I went to grab him and he bit down and just clamped down and then would not let go, and I was pulling him in my arm, and the bite was very, very tight and very rough, and so I was waiting, because he had me so good and so tight, I was waiting for blood, but I didn't see any blood. And so the only thing I could really do, I tried to pull him. He just wouldn't let go. He was doubling down, forcefully doing his business to not let go. And so I grabbed him really tight by the rear portion of his neck. And luckily he wasn't shaking or anything, but I grabbed him by his neck and really tightened down on it. Not to crush anything if I could, but tight enough to show, a little bit of force on my end. And I pulled him and he didn't let go. And this went on for about a minute while he's just latched onto my arm. And so I finally, the combination of me pulling him and put more pressure on his neck, right behind his head, and kind of that gap, that you can grab. And I exerted quite a bit of force, and I pulled him off, and then I, kind of tossed him on the floor, and luckily didn't break the surface of the skin, but like I said, I put ice on this. If my arm would be black and blue already if I hadn't put ice. Ice is so good for any kind of traumatic injury, skin issue, burn, a severe trauma with a cut, anything that's abusive, traumatic to the skin, like an impact or something. Ice, and then there's ice baths for athletes, and muscle recovery. And so ice, even if you're bit by a large python or a medium-sized python or a snake, or a boa, and you feel like you're going to be really sore in that area or on a finger or your hand, ice packs. But I just wanted to share this, because it's not all great and everything, is a fairy tale with tegus. And I just never would have really said I wanted to get bit by, a 3.5, 4 foot tegu and experience that, but I did. It was like a pair of pliers, a big, not small pliers, a big pliers, pipe fitting pliers, and with teeth, and I grabbed that and I scrunched down on my arm. So really aggressive. So I just wanted to bring this video to everybody. That's seems like there's, maybe because I'm more involved, and seeing, having videos and looking at videos and Facebook groups, that more and more and more it seems people, the more videos that are made about tegus, that the more people are like, I want to try a tegu. And I don't think that 80% of them know what they're going to get into in like 6 months. And I think that's very true. And then you have these animals that aren't taken care of, or they got to be rehomed, and then some of the people just discard them, and then some people neglect them and they get abused, and that's just awful for any animal, and it happens so often these days. But I just wanted to bring this video while it's fresh, and yeah. So there we go. Let me get Mac back out here. All right. As soon as he comes outside, he gets squirmy. Maybe, it's just he's going to grab my mic. But Mac is usually such a sweet tegu. It's like 98% of the time. I mean, he's bulletproof, and he's such a sweet lizard, and he's gotten so much heavier as I feed, and he's growing. Let me see if it... Hard to know, with video if you're seeing it all, but he's a large tegu. This one's male, and my red tegu is female. And it just goes to, I want to also express in this video before I close out, that a 4x8 cage is really not a large enough cage. It's like a temporary holding pen. If you have multiple places you can move them to throughout the day, you know, and then they sleep in the 4x8 cage so that they, you know, get up in the middle of the night, they can't wander and get lost in the house. But they really need, I would say minimally, is like a 10-foot by 10-foot cage. Especially when they're male. The female, from just my experience, my female is smaller, and she's just has a different character, so she could stay in a 4x8 more regularly. But Mac needs, you know, a 20 by 20 foot room. It's just like sticking a 17-year-old human being in a 20-foot room for 24 hours and you lock the door. I mean, the teenager would go crazy in that room over 24 hours. And a lot of people put them in their cages and leave them in their cages, and they just pace around in a small box, you know, and a 8x4 is small when a Tegu is used to having, you know, outside and having, you know, no walls or barriers, and then, you know, they get stuck inside and there's just not a lot going on, a lot of new fresh sounds and smells. So I just can't impress that. I mean, if someone was looking at building a cage for their 6-month Tegu, you know, stepping up and building a cage is that you do it once and you overdo it. And so I would recommend trying to get as big as possible, or have multiple cages in your house or multiple rooms where you can house these animals at, or have a cage outside and one inside. But yeah, I think that's it. Mac is usually really, really cool and such a great lizard. I have a lot of trust with him, but he just, for whatever reason, if he was sexually amped up from Sassy, and then he just saw my arm, because he's constantly smelling me, and he knows who I am. Has smelled me for a year and 3 or 4 months, so he knows who I am. And obviously, when I had him around my waist, he knows who I am, and he smelled me, and he knew I wasn't a threat, but he still clamped onto my arm. So other than that, video's too long. Hopefully this was enjoyable, informative is hopefully the most part that I want. So if you found anything from this video, like, share. No one shares videos, my videos at least, but like, and maybe more people will watch my reptile videos. Other than that, I'm going to see me and Mac say bye-bye. And let's see, he doesn't want to get on video. Hey, golly, sharp. See you in another video.